Okay, now you keep fading out, though.
The place, Can Tho, South Vietnam. The occasion, radio communications pinpointing attacks by the Viet Cong. The people, United States Armed Forces personnel, together with yours truly, Bob Vernon, and my daughter Becky, during our visit near a battle zone here in Vietnam. Take my daughter near a battle zone in Vietnam? Why, there are many people in America who are voicing opposition and staging demonstrations against our nation's presence in Vietnam. Why would I bring my daughter here? First, we came to Vietnam because we were invited to do so by the Department of Defense. They're on the lookout for morale-building programs that are both entertaining and inspiring. In Washington, D.C., I had submitted copies of my two compositions, Tell America and Freedom Prayer, together with the album including these songs I had recorded on the Capitol label. Tell America is a rousing, militant number that begins like this. Tell America, tell America, tell America with flag unfurled, that you're glad to live in America, greatest nation in the world. So sing it out and shout it out in a voice both clear and loud. Tell America, tell America, tell America that you're proud. Then, the song speaks of my pride in being an American in spite of the problems that beset our nation. And then it calls attention to the fact that there's a need for all of us to lift our eyes to heaven's skies and to truly be one nation under God. Freedom Prayer is a pounding cadence crying out in behalf of those who are standing valiantly for freedom, particularly our brave boys, whose spirits sometimes are brought low as they're surrounded here by dying and woe. We indicated as we were interviewed in Washington, D.C., that even our lighter numbers would have a purpose and would build towards the closing climactic moments of high inspiration and motivation. We felt certain that we would qualify, for we were greatly impressed by the strict guides outlining what should and what should not be in the program contents. Among other things, the instructions said that material which is considered irreverent towards sacred beliefs could not be used. We knew that our material would pass with flying colors because, of all things, we certainly believe in upholding the cause of God in a right manner. And we also knew that this next stipulation would give us no difficulty. Suggestive material which by words or actions is morally objectionable, or situations which present such considered vices as gambling and intoxication in an attractive light should not be included. Well, naturally, we weren't going to use any kind of material like this. Continuing on, the booklet said, in all situations, good taste in verbal communications and in actions of the cast is expected in order to maintain the high level of entertainment the Department of Defense desires to provide for its armed forces. Secondly, if my daughter had been a son, she would perhaps soon be coming to Vietnam anyway. As a girl, she does not have to join the ranks of those in our armed forces who have taken up arms to strike down the ugly monster of aggression. But she, along with her father, is a child of freedom, a guardian of justice, and a bearer of good news. Surely, we felt, surely there is something that all of us as American patriots can do to help keep the torch of truth and justice burning, not only for ourselves, but for all men everywhere. Surely, I thought, we can go and sing, we can lift up and inspire, we can build morale and faith in the hearts of those who are hazarding their lives for the cause of humanity. Thirdly, we came on this mission of mercy out of a deep sense of duty and devotion. As a dad and daughter team, we're visiting Vietnam because here in this poverty-stricken, war-ravaged country are people who are hungry, thirsty, strangers, people who are destitute, sick, and in prison. Not only among the South Vietnamese, but also within the ranks of battle-weary Americans to whom war brings its special kind of hunger, thirst, loss, its barrenness, its agony, and its confinement. As we have walked up and down hospital corridors in Vietnam, and visited outposts and sung in bunkers, as we have visited orphanages and served in chow lines, we've almost been able to hear a voice say, "I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me." Vietnam means many things to many people. Just the mention of it stirs contrasting emotions and conjures up conflicting imaginations within the hearts of millions of people. Vietnam is diligence and duty to one. It is doubt and despair to another. To one, it is the light of life and liberty. To another, it is the darkness in a dungeon of death. To some, it is a dream of freedom. To others, a nightmare of enslavement. It is devotion and dissent, dedication and demonstration, determination and denunciation, all wrapped up into one. Vietnam is that tiny, far-off parcel of land that has so violently affected the lives and consciences of mankind. Vietnam is that small but strategic nation of Southeast Asia, which the communists are determined to seize by force. Vietnam is that piece of real estate, roughly the shape and half the size of the state of California, where free world forces against unbelievable odds of dense jungles, swampy marshes, and cunning communist Charlies are giving protection and purpose and meaning to 15 million primitive but dignified and peace-loving human beings. Vietnam is that narrow crescent-shaped country whose soil has been made sacred by the blood of almost 16,000 of America's finest and most stout-hearted young. Vietnam is a controversial war, embracing the terms of 3 presidents, costing $50 billion and requiring the fighting presence of 500,000 Americans each year. Vietnam is that domino that will not fall, that proving ground and testing site where the lovers of liberty and fighters for freedom have drawn a line and have said, "This far and no farther." Yes, this is Vietnam. I'd like to review some of the highlights of our journey by letting you hear some of our impressions as we captured them on our transistor recorder. The first leg of our trip to Vietnam took us from our home in Springfield, Missouri, to San Francisco. While I shopped for film supplies and other necessary equipment, Becky looked over the fabulously beautiful city on this, her very first visit. I asked her if she rode the cable car.
Yes, I did, and I was very excited, and I really enjoyed it.
What do you think about going to Vietnam?
I can't believe it.
Becky and I are on board a Greyhound bus on our way towards Travis Air Force Base. We just passed over one of the bay bridges leaving San Francisco. We've had a very, very wonderful time so far on our trip. Of course, we're just barely getting started. Being in San Francisco a little bit early, a couple of days early, gave me some much needed time to look at some film equipment, so I purchased a 16mm camera and picked up the film supplies, and also got some new batteries for this tape recorder. And I hope that the film that we get, the movie that we produce, will be an excellent one that will show people the realities of war and the fact that in spite of opposition to the war in this country and the very sure fact that all of us are against war, that there is needed inspiration for those who are going across the water, and that is the purpose of our trip. Not because we are in favor of violence, but because we do stand for freedom. We do try to stand for dedication to the principles of right. And I'm sure that all of the boys who are in South Vietnam feel this way. we'll all be glad when this very complicated situation comes to a successful conclusion. Of course, they are having the elections in South Vietnam. I don't know what we will find in regard to this. I do know that a little bit of turbulence in the country because of this, and we just hope that everything will work out right.
At 3:30 a.m., we boarded our jet clipper at Travis Air Force Base, and after a long 8-hour flight, the captain's voice came over the loudspeaker system announcing our first stopover at Wake Island.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Captain Cheyenne has just turned the seatbelt sign on. We'll be starting our descent for landing at Wake Island momentarily. We ask at this time that you please check to see that your seatbelt is securely fastened. And absolutely no smoking sign when it appears. Thank you. That was the steward on board. We have now been on this flight from Travis Air Force Base about 8 hours, and we're now making our approach to Wake Island. We're just now gone from a height of about 35,000 feet, now going down through the clouds. I would imagine we're now about an altitude of some 20,000 feet, and the turbulence is getting a little bit worse, but nothing to speak of, really. I understand we'll be here 45 minutes perhaps, and then we'll have a 3-hour flight on to Guam, be there for a short period, and then approximately another 3-hour flight on to Clarkfield in the Philippines. I'm not sure at this stage just how long it will take them to go on to Saigon, but I do know one thing, it's a long old haul.
20 hours out of San Francisco, after brief stopovers in Guam and the Philippines, we finally arrived over the country of Vietnam.
As somebody said, that couldn't be Vietnam. It looks too pretty down there. And certainly it does. Everything looks so green and looks so peaceful. But of course, you know, everything looks different from a long distance. Upon closer examination, things aren't never very much what they really seem to be.
After landing at Saigon and being briefed about our tour, we presented programs at the 3rd Field Hospital and the 79th Maintenance Battalion. From Saigon, we went to Can Tho, where we were guests of the 13th Aviation Battalion and where we took our first helicopter ride. One of the grim realities of the war came home full force just as we got on board the helicopter. One of the men remarked to another, "Sure was too bad about Julian, wasn't it?" And the other one asked, "Why, what?" And he said, "He got it right through the heart yesterday." The next day, still at Can Tho, we appeared before the 244th Aviation Company and D Company of the 5th Special Forces Group. We spent a very tense and exciting night, waiting and watching for an expected VC attack. Blankets were hung up over all the windows, and being a radio man from World War II days, I spent most of the night in the radio shack, following the communication and keeping tab on the movements of Charlie. Let's listen to some of the communication at this time.
It's under attack and the VC are up on the wire. And you got gunships going out her now.
That voice said, "That area is under attack and the VC have men up on the wire. And we've got gunships going down there now."
Likely chain 2, likely chain 1-3, over. Roger, I'll be advised this area is extremely friendly at times. Request you put fire only where you see the muzzle flashes, over. Main Alpha, likely J13, over. Just a quick picture of Alpha. Alpha 13, are you aware that you have an outpost under attack, over?
It was touch and go like this all night long. I finally went to bed about 4:30 in the morning after it appeared that the Viet Cong were not going to penetrate the perimeter. They did get within 2 miles, and that's too close for comfort. We got up the next morning to take communion and to help lead in chapel services. It was a very inspiring worship hour, and all of us were moved deeply as we praised God in word and song. The Vietnamese elections were held on this Sunday, and the special alert continued throughout the day and into the night. The next day saw us flying by chopper to Vung Tau, once a beautiful resort city on the South China Sea. Programs were presented at the 36th Evacuation Hospital and the Naval Support Action Detachment at Cat Lo. One of the highlights of our entire tour came when we took a boat out to the USS Tutuila in the South China Sea. There, about 500 sailors really received us royally. That evening, we made a presentation to a coastal defense group consisting of Americans and Australians, and the next morning we flew up country to the Central Highlands. We had a sudden and unscheduled flurry of excitement at Buniang, north of Pleiku.
That there was a very sudden break-off of communications was we had not anticipated landing here, and I guess because of the activity around here, we suddenly decided to drop in here very abruptly, and so we dropped in very, very swiftly and undid our seatbelts, and just as soon as we got out, a group of soldiers, armed soldiers, came running towards the helicopter. They escorted us very quickly up the hill to a bunker, looking out the village that is under attack. Now you can probably hear in the distance a helicopter that is landing again down at the bottom of the hill, and what kind of developments will be taking place here, we're not just sure. There's an air of excitement around that village, and it looks like we really dropped in on the war and the activity going on here in a very, very realistic way.
There in that bunker, to the tune of artillery fire, we put on an impromptu but emotion-packed program to a dozen or so charged-up Americans and South Vietnamese. I wondered what Pat would think if she knew I'd taken Becky so near the action. Here, listen to the artillery.
There, Mommy, did you hear that?
The following day at Bami Tuat, we were guests of the 155th Aviation Company and MAC-V Advisory Team 33. We were very impressed as we made rounds at a Vietnamese hospital built and administered by the Americans. An Army captain, a doctor from Chicago, talked about the pacification program and the necessity of winning the war by winning the people. I asked him if it was working.
I believe it is. I think that the VC are losing this war. And I'm not talking about from a military standpoint. I'm really not capable of judging a military standpoint. Being a doctor, I think that the people I've talked to, the Vietnamese people I've talked to, with my small knowledge of Vietnamese, have expressed a change even since my coming here. we see more loyalty to the government. We see more in the way of a spirit of cooperativeness among the people. And in fact, lately we've been seeing more of a cooperation on the part of the military, the Vietnamese military, more than when I first came over here. And I think it's largely because the American effort has been directed towards the aid, the giving of aid.
On the 8th of September, we flew north to Kon not too far from Dak To, where there has been such fierce fighting lately. After doing an afternoon show for Detachment B-24 of the C Company of the Special Forces Group, we were taken on a tour of a primitive Montagnard village. We had all the feeling of being in a pre-civilization era, and this backwardness on the part of the Montagnard tribes adds a heavy burden to the already difficult task of training and equipping these people to fight a war. But once trained, I was told, they do make good soldiers. Our hearts almost literally cried out as we drove to a leper colony and mission on the outskirts of Kon. As we mingled among those who are considered outcasts and observed their plight, we were made ashamed of our petty grievances and complaints in this country. That evening, by song and word, we made a special effort to lift the hearts of a large group of the MACV advisory team, fresh in from combat at Dak To. They were really charged up about the riots and demonstrations back home when they were going through so much. On September the 9th, in a monsoon-type downpour, dressed in our fatigues and boots, we and about 100 weary-looking GIs and South Vietnamese crowded into a C-141 cargo plane and almost literally vibrated from Pleiku to Saigon. And all this while we sat cross-legged and jam-packed on the floor of the craft. I tried to console and encourage a clean-cut, boyish-looking 19-year-old soldier who told me how, twice wounded, he had helped sack up some 60 of his buddies after their company had been overrun. That evening, we drove to Long Binh for a performance at the 159th Engineers Group and spent an almost sleepless night as the roar of D&I artillery broke the silence every few moments. The next morning, the beautifully coordinated confusion of the previous day, that is, in regard to transportation problems, continued unabated. We had waited for endless hours on Saturday, and Sunday was simply a repeat performance. But Becky and I were serene because we got to go to church and have communion, and we also assisted in the services at the Benoit Air Base Chapel. We made our last two appearances on September the 11th before a grand group of GIs in the 3rd Brigade of the 1st Infantry Division at Lai Khe. After the evening performance, Becky gave all the guys at the base a big bonus by talking to them in teenage lingo, and most of them are in their teens, and she also got to spin their favorite records over their own base radio station, KLIK. What did we say in Vietnam? In a framework of wholesome entertainment, we said, it's great to be free. Free to laugh, free to love and marry the girl of your choice, free to dream dreams and to see visions, free to have faith and fulfillment in life by believing in God and choosing the highest way, and finally, free to stand up for your country and for other people's country even when you're roundly and soundly criticized.